Dale C. Bronner.
Well, if you will turn in your Bibles, Acts chapter 4. Acts chapter 4. As we're dealing in a series here in the book of Acts, this is actually part 9. And we're focusing in this particular chapter, miracles on trial. Miracles on trial. Notice the first few verses. We'll look at the first 4 verses here. Now, as they spoke to the people, the priest, the captain of the temple, and the Sadducees came upon them, being greatly disturbed that they taught the people and preached in Jesus the resurrection from the dead. And they laid hands on them and put them in custody until the next day, for it was already evening. However, many of those who heard the word believed, and the number of men came to be about 5,000. Now, I want you to notice something here, that as they spoke to the people, the priest and then the captain of the temple and then the Sadducees came upon them. It probably should have read that they came against them. Isn't it interesting that at Pentecost, God brought power to the people, and then he began using the people to change the place. God brings power to the person, and then God uses the person to change the place. And Peter and John spoke the power of the truth to the people. They spoke the power of the truth to the people, and now they are speaking truth to power. There's a time to speak power of the truth, and then there's a time to speak truth to the powers that be. And so now they're taking the occasion to speak truth to power. And so look at the offended power structure that shows up here. The priest, the captain of the temple, and the captain of the temple was the second in command to the high priest himself. And then the Sadducees. Remember the lame man that was healed, and it was really slightly before 3 p.m.? But the temple officers didn't show up until later, when the gates of the temple would have been closed. But the lame man's healing apparently upset the peace and the quiet of the daily temple routine and rituals. Isn't it amazing how people get offended when you begin to change the status quo? If you upset the apple cart, ruffle a few feathers, you know, they become offended with you because you have changed the way that things were. And so a group of the authorities decided to put a stop to it, because they heard about this miracle in the 3rd chapter of the man at the gate called Beautiful, who had been laid there daily from birth, all of a sudden being healed miraculously by the power of God. And they were trying to stop this ruckus that had been caused by this outstanding and remarkable miracle. This man, you know, had been in that condition from birth, and when he got healed, he didn't have to go through a rehabilitation, program of therapy in order to learn how to walk. And mind you, this is somebody who has never walked before. But when they took him and lifted him up, immediately his feet and ankle bones were strengthened. And he didn't just merely go walking, he went leaping. This was an outstanding miracle. They weren't like little baby steps. God accelerated in a moment of time what would have taken months of therapy and perhaps years in teaching somebody who had never walked how to walk. And so these folks that came, as you see, the priest, the captain of the temple, and the Sadducees, they came because they were individuals who were committed to maintaining the status quo. Notice verse 3 here. And they laid hands on them. Now, that they weren't trying to give them, any special anointing. This is a laying on of hands that arrests you. They arrested Peter and John. And they went to jail for doing good. Now, you don't really have a problem so much if you go to jail for doing bad. I mean, if you do the crime, you do the time. But I don't know about you, I don't want to go to jail for a crime I didn't commit. You're going to be trying to explain them and saying what had happened was. Because nobody wants to go to jail for a crime they didn't commit. People don't want to go to jail for a crime they did commit. You know they don't want to go to jail for a crime they didn't commit. But isn't it interesting that the size of their problem of being arrested was predicting the size of their harvest in their future? Think about that for a moment. The size of your problem predicts the size of your harvest in your future. The size of the attack that is coming against your life is a prediction of the size of the victory that's getting ready to come. You don't get a mighty demonic attack if you're just getting ready to go and just do something real simple. The devil doesn't come against people who are down. The devil comes against people who are making a difference. Why would the devil waste his time with somebody who's not making any difference at all? But if you ever start shaking some things up, and then here comes Slewfoot. He wants to then attack you when you're trying to do something good. He doesn't waste his time trying to break in folks' house in the projects who don't have anything. I mean, the devil is not a fool. He goes where the treasure is. So if the devil comes and starts messing with you, he is actually alerting you to a fact that there is treasure in you. Valuable treasure. He comes to rob, kill, and to destroy. Why would he come to rob somebody who didn't have anything? So if the devil is on your trail, he is giving you insight that there is something of worth and value in your life, and the devil says, I want what you have. He's an envious little devil, just green with envy. He's not jealous, he's envious. When you're jealous of somebody, you want something like what they have. A jealous woman wants a man like your man, but an envious woman wants your man. You got to watch an envious person. They don't want shoes and pocketbooks like yours. They want your shoes and your pocketbook. They don't want a house like yours. They want your house. So if anybody is coming to attack you, you don't attack people who are not doing anything, and you don't attack people who don't have anything. If you're under attack, it means that you're doing something and that you have something. The devil is already predicting something to us, and many people don't even realize what the wealth of the treasure that is in their life when the devil starts messing with them. Now notice this next verse reveals here that about 5,000 men came to faith in Jesus Christ as a result of Peter and John's preaching. That's a pretty good altar call in anybody's book. And did you think about the fact that they got an altar call of 5,000 men without a PA system and without a Hammond B3? And they got an altar call of 5,000 men. The Greek word aner, A-N-E-R, was specific of men who were regarded as heads of nuclear families, as opposed to anthropos, which includes both men and women. You know, anthropos, like anthropology, that includes men and women. That's like the generic word mankind. But the word here that's talking about men is the word A-N-E-R. And that was specific of men who were regarded as the head of their nuclear families, the head of the household. So a very conservative estimate of just say that each man had one wife and one child, that would put the figure at 15,000 believers. If you got 5,000 men that get saved, and they've got one wife and just one child, now you know they didn't have birth control. You had a litter of children. You didn't just have one or two. They had a whole lot of children because they were agricultural people. And you had to raise your farm hands. So they had a lot of children. So the most conservative number that we would come up with to say that this thing, because they got the head of the household, it represents at least 15,000. And there were 4 children and just one woman. Just do the math on that. Take the 5,000 times 4. You see, and you'll get a huge number that begins to grow and grow. But we'll just say that there were 15,000 because heads of households came to Jesus. And in that day, these were the heads of household that made decisions for the household. I was talking recently with a professor of New Testament in an Ivy League institution, and he said to me that the word Abba, like Abba Father, he said that word really doesn't mean daddy. He said that word Abba means like the Godfather. He's like the Godfather. It's the word, sort of what we would say in this day and time. He is the patriarch, not just of the nuclear family, of just mother, father, and then the children, but you know, the patriarch of the whole clan, cousins, grandchildren, all of that. He's the patriarch of the family. Some of you all know those kind of patriarchs and matriarchs that actually make decisions for the whole family. They say, listen, when they say what the family is going to do, there's a matriarch. Whoever runs and pulls that thing together for the family reunion and starts saying, no, we're not going to have any of that. You're looking at a matriarch and a patriarch. They have rule. When they were calling God Abba, they were talking about the Godfather. This is the one that called a shot. He just look at somebody and you know, take them out. This is a Godfather. This is a word that carried heavy authority with it. And these men here, they were head of household, this 5,000 men that gave their lives to Jesus. And so if 15,000 of them got saved there, that was more folks. Have you thought about the fact that that was more folks that were saved on the day of Pentecost? 3,000 got saved on the day of Pentecost. Now here, a couple of chapters over, this is really 3 months later, 15,000 folks getting saved. Now for the church growth to go from 3,000 to 15,000 in 3 months calculates to 130 new converts a day. 130 new converts a day. That's what you call momentum. Say momentum. And that's why the powers that be were concerned over what was happening. This was not a huge metropolis. I mean, this metropolis might have had perhaps 25,000 people there. And if you have 3,000 that get saved, and then 15,000 that get saved, you know, just in that metropolis. Now, of course, some of those original 3,000, remember the folks that come in to make their pilgrimage for the Pentecost feast. So they didn't necessarily live there, so that was a host of other folks. But when you get nearly 10% of the population saved, the powers that be are going to take notice of it. When you're beginning to change things. And this is exactly what was happening here. And I believe that Luke inserts this verse here to give us a progress report on how the early church was growing. The goal of the gospel is not merely about healings and miracles, but about souls added to the kingdom of God, changing the lives of people for the glory of God. He used miracles to get folks' attention so he could preach the gospel and get them saved. Isn't it amazing that this one man who was a beggar at the gate called Beautiful led to a revival of 5,000 men getting saved? So it gave them a platform to be able to preach the gospel and get them saved. It was not merely about getting a lame man healed. It was about getting a community saved and committed to Jesus Christ. And just remember that nothing becomes great until it overcomes opposition. Nothing becomes great until it overcomes opposition. You have to be very careful about opposition that will come your way in your life. The devil tries to oppose the people of God, and if you are doing right, you will face terrible opposition. You would think that if you're doing good, that people would pat you on the back and ask you, how can I help you? But you know that there are haters in the world. Not everybody is going to celebrate you. Some folks are just going to hate on you. Now, can I give you a word of wisdom? There are some things that will come into your life and cause destruction that are loud, and those are not the areas of your real concern. Like, let's say the Bible calls us trees of the Lord, trees of righteousness. And then if there's going to be an attack on a tree, do you know what attacks trees? Woodpeckers. That's not a secret attack, though. I mean, I've seen a woodpecker just standing at a tree and just, I wouldn't be just ramming my head up against a tree. I don't know what they get out of that. But they're just tearing that tree up, and they're chipping away at it. It's not a secret, though. You can hear them. It's like somebody just knocking at something. Just if you've ever observed a woodpecker in operation, it's not the woodpeckers that you have to be concerned about. These are the ones that let you know I don't like you. That's not who you have to worry about. They make a lot of noise when they're doing that destructive work. They don't talk behind your back. They're talking about you in your face. They get on Facebook and put negative stuff about you. Those are woodpeckers. You don't have to really worry about woodpeckers. It's better to know where your enemies stand than to know where your friends sit. You don't have to worry about woodpeckers. What you do have to worry about if you're a tree is a termite. They don't make a sound, eating away at your very fabric on the inside, trying to destroy you quietly, subtly, surreptitiously. There they are, coming and eating away at your foundations. And all of a sudden one day you get ready to swing open something and it swings off. And you realize that this thing is dry rotted and you have been eroded from the inside because an enemy has come in and been quietly eating away and undermining your structure. May I just remind you of this, that an enemy is anybody who reduces your influence in your absence. If a parent does not allow their children to do certain things, and then you're letting them stay with somebody else, and then your parents say, well, your mama is not here right now, baby. I know your mama don't let you eat candy, honey, but you ain't at your mama's house now. You at my house. I'm going to give you some candy. Come here. And they are undermining your authority. A real enemy is somebody who diminishes your influence in your absence. You don't really know whether people love you until they are not in your presence. You have to be very, very careful about how the enemy works. He will come against you not as the woodpecker, but as the termite. And I'm just giving you a warning now that you better check your wood out for stuff that burrows itself in you, for folks that's trying to get close enough. Don't worry about those on the outside knocking at your door. Those are not the ones. They're the ones that you've already let in the house who are quiet, not saying anything. Those are the ones that make you think that they are with you. And they do more damage through infiltration than they do through confrontation. The woodpecker does confrontation. The termite does infiltration. So whenever you're trying to do something that is good and lofty, you will always receive demonic opposition. If you don't receive any demonic opposition, you better question whether or not you are really going with God or whether you're walking with devils. Because if you are doing the God thing, you're going to ruffle some feathers. And so whenever you feel as though you're going through tribulation or persecution, I want you to ask this question: God, are you trying to change me, or are you trying to use me to change something else? Are you trying to change me, God, in the midst of everything that's happening? Are you trying to change me? Because your trouble can change you. We evolve in the midst of trouble, because when you go through trouble, you have to develop to be able to handle the trouble, to keep from losing your mind. There are certain things that you have to adjust. When God does not deliver you out of your trouble, God will develop you in your trouble. And the very thing that you went into the water to do, it actually brings something out of you. The coffee bean doesn't release its power until it touches water. Its efficacy is released by the water, and then God puts us in water, and you're like, well, Lord, what are you doing this for? The tea bag is not exposed until it gets in hot water. When you get in hot water, then God brings your essence out. He will bring your essence out. Your power is released when you get in the water. That's where it is released. It's released when you get in the water. And so if you don't understand what God is doing, you will point your finger at God and think that God's trying to attack you, when God's really trying to develop you. God's trying to give you a testimony. God's trying to work patience in your life. He wants to let patience have her perfect work. Sometimes God will strip you down to where you need folks because you can't even do it all by yourself. He will strip you down from your pride, where you want to handle everything by yourself and you don't want to ask anybody for anything because you handle your own stuff and you strong. You don't have to ask anybody for help. God will break you down, have you in a fetal position, sucking your thumb. He knows how to break you down. He's an eternal God. You will never beat him at the waiting game. Never. So always ask the question, Lord, are you trying to change something in me, or do you want to develop me and use me to change something else? What is it that you're doing? As long as I know what you're doing, Lord, I'll be with the program. I need to know, Lord. Come on, let me in on the secret so I can adjust my attitude. If I get a glimpse of what God is trying to do, oh, bring on the hot water, turn it on, and let my essence out. Now, he's getting ready to serve some strong tea, but they're going to know that your flavor has hit the water. It's not going to be left the same way when your flavor touches it. And notice verse 5 here. And it came to pass on the next day that their rulers and elders and scribes, as well as Annas the high priest, Caiaphas, John and Alexander, and as many as were of the family of the high priest, were gathered together at Jerusalem. Notice that. And when they had set them in the midst, they asked them, by what power or by what name have you done this? Now here, Peter and John, this is the Sanhedrin court that is assembled here. They're referred to as a council in verse 15. This is the Sanhedrin court. And this is no insignificant group. The Sanhedrin consisted of 70 members plus the high priest, who actually served as the president, essentially, of the Sanhedrin. And F.F. Bruce says that the Sanhedrin was the Senate and the Supreme Court of the Jewish nation. This was a powerful, influential body. And this is the group that brought Peter and John before them. So the situation must have been considered extremely serious for such an array of dignitaries to make room in their calendars on for an impromptu meeting.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.